Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we'll talk about variables and data type inside JavaScript. We'll talk about what is variable, how to create these variables. We'll see both older way and newer way of creating variables. We also talk about different data type inside JavaScript. So let's start our video with the question, what is a variable? You can imagine variable as a box or container which contains some data. Now this data can be text or number. Or if I take a real life example to explain variables, like if you have a website or a program and you want to perform some operation onto the user, like a username alias, and you want to display this name onto the console, or you want to send an email to the alias, or if you want to send a notification. Now these are the three functions inside your program. So you have to hard code alias everywhere inside these functions. Or in the future, if you want to change the alias to some other names like alias to Bob, so you have to make changes inside all these three functions. Now instead of this, we can create a box or variable and store this username inside this box. Now whenever we want to use this name, we can simply use this box. Or if you want to make the changes, you have to make the changes inside one place. Now to create a variable inside JavaScript, there are three keywords like var, let and const keyword. Where var is the older way of creating variables and let and const is the newer way of creating variables. We'll talk about both the ways of creating variables. First we'll talk about var. So now to create a variable using var, we just have to write var, then a variable name like username. You can give any name to the variable, but just don't use the name as same as a reserved word like var. Var is the keyword in JavaScript. Now keyword tells the JavaScript to perform some operations. Like here, var keyword tells the JavaScript to create a simple variable. For now, I use username as a variable name. Then we have an assignment operator which will store the value inside this variable. Now we have an value, so I just call it alias, and then we have semicolon. Now here we just created a variable and assign it a value. Now we can use this variable anywhere inside our program. For now, I just will log this value to the console. Now I just run the program. Now we have alias as output. Now here, instead of alias as a hard coded, I use a variable name. Now here we just store a string inside a variable. Now string is just a data type inside JavaScript. Now there are different data types inside JavaScript. We'll look one by one. So these data types help us to which operation can be performed on which type of data. Like on the numbers, we can perform addition, subtraction, multiplication. Like we can also check which type of data a variable hold using a type of operator. We just have to write type of and a variable name. Now if I save and run the program, you see we have output as a string data type. That means our variable username holds a string. Now for here, I just make a comment that we just saw a string data type. Now this string data type is just a group of characters enclosed in the quotes. Now these quotes can be double quotes, or you can also use the single quotes inside a JavaScript. JavaScript allows both the ways of creating strings. We have another data type. So I will just create a variable as a score and it just store a number inside this score. Now this is a number data type. Now this number data type can be without decimal or with decimal like 0.34. JavaScript will treat as a number data type. Now we can perform different operation on this number data type. Like we can also, like I already said, we can have addition, subtraction operations. Now inside this string, we can also have numbers like we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this will treated as a string and this is treated as a number. So if I want to perform the operation, so for now I just rename as alias. Now if I want to update the score by 20, I will just write it as a score plus 20. Now this will give the output as a 420. If I want to use this value later in this my program, I must have to store this value somewhere else. So I will just create another variable like we have a new score, and then we can store this value. Log this value to the console. Now we have 420 as output. We can also use score variable to store our updated value. Like we just have to write score and our new value like score plus 20. Okay. Now if I call this again, now here we have score value as a 420. Now again we have 420 plus 20 which become 440. Now if I just log this value. Okay, now we have 440 as output. Now you can also perform multiple operations, like you can have subtraction, division or multiplication or any complex mathematical algorithm onto this number. Next we have a boolean data type. Now this will contain only two values like true and false. You can compare it with the light switch in your room. Like if this true, that means your light switch is on, and if it's off, that means the value is false. In programming concept, like you have weather app and you want to display a message to user if the today is raining, the user should have bring umbrella or not. So I just create a variable like we have a is raining variable. Now if this value as a true, now user should bring the umbrella. And if this value is false, that means today is sunny day. Now this true and false, both the keywords in JavaScript, so we don't have to use quotes. Okay, now the next data type, we have an undefined data type. The undefined data type means if we create a variable and didn't assign a value to it, now this will by default become undefined. Like I have a variable called user, and if I didn't assign the value and I simply log this value to the console, now we see we have undefined value. Now if I check the type of the variable, which is also undefined. In JavaScript, we can also make the variable undefined explicitly, like we have assignment operator and then we have undefined keyword. Next, we have a null data type, like I create a variable as x and assign a null value to it. Okay, when we assign a null value to a variable, that means we assign no value to variable. A null value is equal to no value inside the programming. I know this sound may be confusing between undefined or null, but this is how JavaScript works. So now we'll move to the next data type. The next data type, we have object data type, which is also called as a reference data type. In object data type, we can create a simple object like we have key value pairs or create an array. In this video, I'll not cover the array data type because I already created a video explaining about array. If you didn't watch that video, you can go and watch it. I already provided the link in the description. For now, we just create a simple object, and in another video, we'll see object data type in details. So I'll just create a variable like we have car. Okay, then we have assignment operator, then we have an curly braces. Now inside these curly braces, we write our key value pairs. Like I have key like price, and we have to separate key value using the colon, like these two dots, and then we have value like 2000. And now if we have multiple key value, we have to separate them with comma, like we have model number of the car, then we have colon, and we have like random string. Now I just log this car variable. Now we have object inside our console. Now inside this object, we have two keys like price and models. Now if I check the type of the value, we have object data type as an output. We can also access the single key into this object using a dot operator, like we have car name or variable name dot and key name like price. Now if I save and run the program, we have as a 2000 as a output. We can also have a model key. I hope you understand the basic data types inside the JavaScript. Now we'll move to let and const keyword. We can use the let instead of where, like we have let keyword, and then we have variable name like username, and we can have a value like we have alias. There is only difference between let and where, that where creates a variable which has a global scope, and let's create a variable which has a local scope. Like here I just create a simple scope. Inside the scope I create a variable using where has a value as a 2, and I create a second variable using let like b, which is value as 4. I log these two values a and b. Now if I save and run the program, now we have 2 and 4 as the output. Now what happens if I try to access this value outside the scope? Now if I save and run the program, Now you see we have a reference error for B. A B is created with a let keyword and which has a local scope. We can access only this variable inside these curly braces. We should have to use let keyword instead of var keyword for creating a variable. So, and lastly we have a const keyword. Now const will create a variable which has a constant value. That means the value, when we assign a value to this variable becomes constant and cannot be changed anywhere in the program. Like I have a value called pi value which is value as a 3.14. Now if I try to change this value, like we have a 3, now if I save and run the program, now we have an error. That means we created a constant value and we can't change the value. So that's it for today. See you in next video.